This short presentation is to address what we do and why we are doing it. We find that there have been lots of different experiences of chiropractic that may not be the same as what we do. So before people start care, we like them to have the opportunity to get a brief overview and make sure that what we do fits with their values and needs. If it doesn't, we're happy to find you somewhere else, and if it does, we would love to work with you. As we go through this series of slides, you'll become aware of the behaviours that you have been doing throughout your life relative to your health care. You will make some realisations about how you would like to run your life from this point on. When we come into our life, we have a certain potential. Barring congenital defects and the like, a newborn baby has a high level of health expression. There are two phenomena that dictate the way our life expresses. Throughout our life, we encounter different stressors that we need to deal with. The stressors always have an effect of breaking us down. They ultimately win. Stressors come in three primary forms. Physical, those forces ranging from sport, work, accidents to the ever-present force of gravity. By the way, as some of the older members in the audience know, gravity always wins. We droop and stoop with age. Chemical, those substances in the air, water and food that we consume have a direct effect on us. The same chemical substance can either be a food or a poison. Mental, every thought we have has an effect on our body and our health. In these times of high stress in our busy lives, the mental component is becoming quite a force to be reckoned with. Stressors are always trying to break us down, but at the same time, we have a resistance within us that is always trying to build us up. In life, as long as the stress doesn't exceed the resistance, we can experience a healthy state. If the stressors overpower the resistance, then we start to succumb. For many of us, it's a very gradual process of breakdown. We don't always realise that we are losing our function, as we don't check today how we are compared to a month or a year ago. We take things day by day, and we find that gradually our body doesn't work quite as well as it used to. Ultimately, there is going to be a point or a threshold where we go over the line from a state of no symptoms into the expression of symptoms. The normal thing to do when we get symptoms is to seek out something that will help, something that will make the symptoms go away, something that will give some ease. We then contact a healthcare practitioner of some description. It may be a chiropractor or a medical doctor or a physiotherapist. It doesn't matter what the vehicle is, we will do whatever we can to get above this line again. If you look at the TV and the magazines, the healthcare advertising is geared to getting people above the line, to a position at which we are feeling okay once again. This stage of care is very short term, and when we just get over the line, if we don't change the stressors that are happening in our life, then we end up going back down below the line again. You can relate to that, I'm sure. You may take an aspirin or another pain reliever for your headache, and the headache goes away. The stresses continue, and in a very short period of time, you may need to take more aspirin. Relief care could also be a natural therapy, ranging from herbal remedies to chiropractic and physiotherapy. The motivator for this type of care is to get above the line, to be rid of symptoms. You feel okay for a day, a week, a month, a year, but eventually then you come back down below the line again. Every time you go below the line, there is damage being done. There is a disruption of tissue, and part of that is irrecoverable. We ultimately get to a point where we no longer get above the line, no matter what we take. This is a model of healthcare that we've been following up to now. The thinking is that as long as we are above the line and don't have symptoms, we are okay. This thinking and action will ultimately lead to a life of very average proportions. In fact, the last 18 months of life is where the majority of our healthcare dollars are spent. If we are truly offering healthcare, maybe it could be spent somewhere else. Let's have a look at that. The way of behaving has led to many results which we'll now look at. Chronic diseases are increasing. Diseases like cancer are on the increase, regardless of how much money and talent we throw at it. Degenerative conditions are increasing. Arthritis, Alzheimer's and the like are becoming rampant. Antibiotics cannot handle the new strains of resilient bacteria. It is well publicised that asthma is increasing. Childhood obesity is increasing. The only thing that is not increasing, and indeed improving, is our health. Which leads us to the conclusion that our healthcare system is not working, and it's costly. And part of the reason it's not working is because it's a disease care system rather than a healthcare system. The medical-based healthcare system around the world is failing. Let's look at a few of the facts around our healthcare system. Most Western nations are spending 8 to 10% of their gross national product on so-called healthcare, and that's not the main cost. The medical system is the number one cause of death and injury in the USA. A recent article in the British Medical Journal states that in Australia and New Zealand, 1 out of every 5 deaths is as a result of either mistakes in hospitals or the use of properly researched, properly registered, properly prescribed and properly used drugs. In other words, the equivalent of New Zealand's second largest city, Christchurch, has been killed by preventable medical error. In other words, more than 5 million people have been killed by Western medical practice in the past decade. That's Europe, USA, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. It's a sad result. We could be considered insane. So let's have a look at what people have been doing and see if there is a saner way to achieve the results we want for ourselves and our loved ones. There is another option. In the chiropractic context, we realise that getting relief is important. You may have come in here with something that is wrong and that you want to get fixed. We realise that it's a lot quicker to take a drug. Take something to numb the pain and it's all gone. If you want your body to return towards optimal health, it will take a little longer. The objective is the same as taking a drug and the result is still the same, but the body heals and repairs in what we call initial intensive care. We also want to get some stabilisation to move you above the line and a bit further, because the further above the line you are, the more momentum you have and the less likely you are to fall below the line again. At the end of initial intensive care, there are 2 choices. We either dismiss you and wait until the next drama hits, or you can go into a state of rebuilding. Rebuilding is called corrective care. Corrective care takes into account that if your body is to reconstruct, your resistance has to increase and neutralise the stressors. The stressors in our life are quite significant. It's said today that we experience as much stress or input into our body in one day as our predecessors 200 years ago experienced in a whole year. Just imagine what your brain is having to do as you drive along a 2-lane road in traffic doing 100 kilometres an hour, and the cars coming the other way are doing 100 kilometres an hour. You are passing within 1 metre of each other. Imagine the calculations taking place in your nerve system. Consider all the radio waves, TV waves, and all the unseen waves that are coming into your body every second. Consider the mental and emotional stressors. What about the chemical stressors in our food and environment? The corrective care phase is about allowing your resistance to increase and, to some degree, looking at controlling your stressors. Not to wrap you up in cotton wool, but to realise there are things that we can be doing to take the stress off the system so that your body has a chance to reconstruct or rebuild. The third phase of care is wellness care. The goal of wellness care is to, as much as possible, have you experience life at your highest potential. When we are born, we have a certain potential, and as I said before, by the time we develop symptoms and dwell below the line, there's damage being done, which then limits the amount of expression of health which we can expect in the future. The person below the line is at the lower end of the sickness journey, has a reconstruction potential which is much lower than a person who starts at the top of the slide. This is why it is so important for children to have chiropractic care. How do we adjust to a higher level of well-being? Our well-being depends on body chemistry. If we were to run a fast race, we have to have a body chemistry that's in the right proportions for us to run the race. Our body will make all these chemicals on demand at the right time and in the right quantities. For example, the liver makes over 800 different chemicals, and to run that fast race, your body knows exactly what's needed, at what time, and in what proportion. Our body chemistry depends on a production unit. These production units are called the cells, organs, and glands. The cells, organs, and glands make the chemistry which allows us to work properly and enjoy well-being. And the cells, organs and glands need some instructions. Their controlling unit is the nervous system. The nervous system controls the cells, organs and glands, and they make the chemistry, and then the chemistry allows us to work properly. Let's have a look at the loop. Here we have a brain. It sends out messages. These messages go down to tissue. The tissue then does what it's told to do and sends a message back to the brain saying, "Okay, I've done it." That's a normal feedback loop. The brain and the nerve system coordinate the function of all the cells, tissues and organs in the body and adapt us to our environment. It allows us to live our life more healthily and therefore more fully. In summary, in order to have well-being, we need to have our body chemistry in the right proportions. In order to have the body chemistry working well, we need our cells and glands to be working well. And for them to be working well, we need to have our nerve system working well. For example, the brain cells connect to the tissue cells in the stomach that produce acid. The acid cells in the stomach need to have the brain telling them what's coming in, what sort of food to expect, and how to work with it. Imagine if you were to go into the kitchen and pick up a lemon from the fruit basket. You place the lemon on the chopping board and cut through the lemon. You then take half the lemon and bring it to your mouth and squeeze it. What's your mouth doing right now? It's salivating because it's expecting that bitter taste, isn't it? And that's just at the thought of it. In reality, what happens is that you are salivating because your brain is already calculating all the chemicals that are needed to deal with that lemon. And it's sending messages down to the stomach saying, "Hey, we've got some acid food coming down and you don't need to make as much acid." So as the food arrives in the stomach, and as it has been forewarned, the acid-producing cells know exactly what needs to happen, and they make exactly the right proportions of the required chemicals. The food breaks down and off it goes. The stomach then sends a message back to the brain saying, "We've done what we've been asked to do." The brain replies, "Good on you. Just relax until the next time I ask you to do something." A simplified version, yet an example of the majesty and the magic of how our body works, without us even having to think about it. We can have interference to this cycle. An interference is called subluxation. Interference can happen at any level, be it the brain cells, the tissue cells, or anywhere in between. In a subluxated state, we start to find things going crazy. We find the acid cells continuing to work because they haven't got a message from the brain to tell them to stop, or we find the acid cells not even kicking in, so only the food gets partially digested. Interference occurs when a stress overpowers resistance. As we discussed earlier, there are 3 forms of stress: chemical, mental, and physical. Chemically, we have habits such as smoking that is a significant neurotoxin for both the smoker and those around them. We have drugs, prescribed or illicit. We have environmental pollutants and, of course, our self-pollutants. We have such foods as ice cream, which have a huge number of chemicals in it, which are not good for us to consume. Nervous system interference can be mental. Mentally and emotionally, it could be those damn computers that can be a source of stress. Reprimands from scolding parents, this even influences the unborn child. The loss of a loved one, the loss of a game or work stress. Who has never experienced mental stress? We can have physical. We can have well-meaning actions like throwing babies up in the air. That activity has actually been listed by the National Institute of Neurological Diseases and Stroke in the States and has been the #1 cause of juvenile whiplash. That innocent little game that I bet most dads have played. The kids love it, but it can actually cause trauma to the infant's neck, which is implicated in subluxation. Electromagnetic forces, such as those received from electrical equipment, TVs and power lines, are also significant stressors to our delicate nervous system. We encounter falls, accidents, injuries, along with sprains and strains associated with the rough and tumble of life. The most common time for the first subluxation is within the birth process or the latter stage of pregnancy. 95% of all gestations and births have intervention of some kind. I would challenge people to recognise someone who hasn't had any intervention in their pregnancy. Or with the birth process nowadays, the majority of them are certainly interfered with. We have methods of birthing which are less than ideal for the human frame. This slide is from a text that shows doctors how to deliver babies by rotating the head to free the upper shoulder and then rotating the other to free the lower shoulder. The angle of rotation is beyond the body's normal ability to rotate. This action can have significant damage to the delicate little bones at the top of the baby's neck. Stretching is a major irritant to the child's nervous system. And of course, cesarean, forceps, vacuum extraction also produce a significant amount of stress to babies' spines, cranial systems, and the entire nerve system. Subluxation is a major interference in the nerve system and then sets off a cascade of events. If the cells, organs, and glands don't work properly, the chemistry gets out of balance and the well-being gets all out of kilter. Adjustments are what chiropractors give to allow the nerve system to work better. When the nerve system works better, our cells, organs, and glands work better. And when our cells, organs, and glands work better, our chemistry works better and our well-being is enhanced. This is how many people get more than what it is that they came for within the practice. That increase in sense of well-being, in addition often to resolution of symptoms. And when people come into care, we have 3 phases of care that we address, as you can see here in our lifestyles option chart. At the first visit, for initial intensive care, we go through case history, exams, physical, neurological, chiropractic and orthopaedic checks. We do different scans, x-rays and whatever is indicated to find out what is going on with your spine and nervous system. At the second visit, we give you a personalised report of findings based on the results of the first visit. This report is designed to give you the information you need to decide on a course of initial intensive care. Initial intensive care is designed to stabilise the primary subluxations, enhance your resistance and get you above the line.